Good morning, everybody. And I know for many people it was a welcome relief to be able to move around and leave the home for recreational purposes. And I want to thank everybody for their cooperation. In the main, New South Wales citizens dealt with the easing of restrictions in a very positive way, and I want to thank everybody for respecting the new environment and also adapting to it. Overnight, there were nearly 6,000 tests, of which there was just one positive case, which was from a known source, an overseas traveller. And as we know, the number of tests always dips on a weekend, and I expect to have a similar number of tests reported tomorrow, but we really need people to come forward and get tested. If you have the slightest symptom, the mildest symptom, please come forward and get tested. But thank you to the nearly 6,000 people who got tested over the weekend, and it's positive news that there was just one confirmed case out of that. But today I'm pleased to be joined by the Minister for Transport, Andrew Constance. We know that as people feel more confident about the workplace, about moving around the community, they do want to look at their options about moving around. And we said last week, and we say it again this week, if you want to use public transport in the peak, we recommend firstly that you check the apps available, which tell you what services do have some capacity in the peak. But because we are strictly adhering to social distancing, we recommend that people who aren't already on the system in the peak, especially on buses and trains, travel in the off-peak, so after 10 a.m. or before 2 p.m, in order to make sure that social distancing is there. On buses and light rail, there is capacity, so you might want to think about a different way to do your journey in the morning. You might want to get dropped off at a ferry wharf or dropped off on a light rail route. Both those modes are under capacity at the moment in the peak. However, buses and trains are pretty much at capacity in the peak. However, I want to thank everybody in transport for making sure we now have apps available through your normal transport app, which tells you demand. It tells you whether there are any services or seats available during that peak time. We don't want people to either get the virus or spread the virus on public transport. There'll be deep cleaning, there'll be extra measures in place. There'll also be special identifications of where you should be sitting or standing on the mode of transport, so you'll have that advice as well, which is being rolled out from this morning. I'm pleased to say the transport team has also looked at opportunities to have event-style parking, so places like Moore Park and other places in and around the CBD, but also in employment hubs will be investigated and more pop-up parking stations will be made available. Again, it's not a message you'd give without COVID about we normally encourage people to catch public transport, but given the constraints in the peak and the fact that we're exercising social distancing, we do want people to consider different ways to get to work. In addition to that, the Minister for Transport will also have further details on pop-up bike lanes, encouraging people to use active transport. And the other thing is just consider the way you normally got to work and think about how you might be able to adjust that to avoid buses and trains in the peak who are already pretty much at capacity. But again, if you want to use the system during those peak times, we recommend you planning ahead. You can look at the app for the records the day before and have a look to see what demand was like and then plan your trip accordingly. But please know that when it comes to public transport, we're always looking at opportunities to increase the capacity in the peak, increase services and give people more options. And at the moment, the options are laid out, but please know the transport team is working day and night to make sure we have a COVID-safe transport network. But it might mean adjustment. It might mean you considering different ways in which to get to work, different ways in which to get dropped off potentially. So in the past, we would have encouraged everybody onto the public transport network, but now in the COVID environment, we'll ask you to consider getting dropped off. When it comes to school children, we recommend, if you can, walking the children to school or dropping them off to avoid the public transport system outside of, obviously, the school bus system, which caters specifically for school children. So all the technology will be there to give you real-time information, but we do want to stress that we will have strict social distancing on the network to protect everybody and to make sure the virus isn't acquired or spread through the transport network. I'll now ask Dr. Chant to give her daily medical report and